Welcome to the Cinephile Hissy podcast, the tirade film movie debate podcast hosted by two film critics, two amazing dads, and two summertime school teachers. I'm Don Shanahan.
And I'm William Red Guardian Johnson.
Oh, see, I knew you were going to take character as we speak here. Figures. We're damn glad to have you, folks. This is all for tantrum's sake, where shared passions and high fives wash away any place for hate. In the end, we encourage you all to love what you love. But for now, the gloves are off and the hissy fit is on. I'm here with the Marvel shill Will Johnson. He is fresh. He is raw. He is Ben Stiller walking out on the date with Cameron Diaz with semen hanging from his ear. He is that fresh coming out of Black Widow.
Oh my God.
This week, folks, we are going to talk about, and I'm just saying, hey, gotta spice it up for the audience here. This week, folks, we are going to talk about Black Widow, the newest film from the MCU. It is recommended pretty much by both of us and the entire society at will. Our format is going to loosen up here a little bit because there's not a lot of fun. I have formed thoughts. I saw this film a week ago for press. I was definitely ahead of the game. Got a nice published review on 25 Well. We'll link that in the show notes and all that. Will is coming into this thing, like I said, Ben Stiller style here. So he needs to kind of have a little bit of a exhale while we kind of go here for a bit. So I think both of us are going to kind of go back and forth here with a little bit of an open format to kind of put our praise, put our criticisms into the kind of place where we can have point and counterpoints in a live kind of thing. So instead of our usual 5 and 5 and 15, we're just going to put the 30-minute timer on, folks, and just talk. So welcome to a, very open-ended, maybe double love, maybe double hate, hard to tell. I don't know what kind of Ben Stiller's walking in the door with me from Will Johnson, but we'll see what we've got. So the timer is on. Will, do you want me to go first? Just to kind of get things in, or do you want me to go first?
Well, I'll tell you what. Let me just get some initial thoughts because I'm so fresh. I literally just got out of the car and hooked up the equipment at my dad's house because he was babysitting today while I watched my movie, my stories, as they say. So I'm gonna sound off in general real quick, and then I'll let you kind of put some thoughts together. But I'm gonna say that this was a very unique experience. I left the theater feeling very comfy, very very satisfied. I was not like necessarily emotionally satisfied, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I think that this is very much a and I don't mean this as a negative either, a very mid-tier MCU entry. It's kind of like, a middle comic that you would read in a long run. It's very episodic, very good, but I'm not going to say it's on the precipice of great. But I am very satisfied with the experience. Let's put it that way.
Okay. I coming out of it, I gotta say, this is lower third MCU for me. Now, I'll be the guy that says it, like I said it last time when we talked about Iron Man 3. I don't think Marvel has made a per se bad film, but they make things of just a fair to middling range of quality where every now and then you get one that's kind of like, all right, that's fine, but nothing that's gonna, like you're kind of saying, move me to pieces. And I know every critic in the whole wide world has said this, and I can't help but agree. But this is a movie that is, I don't want to say done dirty. I'm not going to use the fancy terms and all that, or the cool millennial terms. But this movie is, without a doubt, too late, and it's harder to get emotional attachment and to get all kind of, like you said, a middle issue of a series. But if this is the middle issue of a series, it's the one I couldn't find on the store shelf, and I made it to the rest of the year crossover thing, and they're like, oh wait, what happened in September? I think I can go find that issue in the back issue shelves, and I go read it and go, oh wow, yeah, I guess that would have been a cool little connecting thing had I seen that at the time. And too much of this movie on a lot of levels is hampered by that. And I was worried about that going in, where I was still very disciplined. I didn't see any trailers. But you kind of just know it's Black Widow. It's a prequel. The Black Widow we know is no longer with us and current in the MCU. We knew there'd be some new introduced characters, but you still get to that, I hate to say, Disney Star Wars solo situation, but you have a bit of a foregone
Mm,
conclusion situation because you know Natasha's going to make it every single step of the way. There's some very compelling and very well done action scenes and all that, but I think that there you have the moment where, since you know the title character is going to make it, it comes down to, well, who else is here and who else will make it or won't. And just to jump into we could kind of jump into spoilers. It's
yeah, let's do it.
Everybody makes it. Yeah, I mean, everybody makes it, and that's kind of weak sauce to me. And the other part of
Mm,
weak sauce is, this woman is a killer. This woman has a very dark past, and we get whispers and hints of it and no teeth to it. And I found that just to be like, if you're gonna come back here and tell this story and go through the dark tale of what it takes to create these women, and you just kind of give me the child kidnapping angle and a quick montage to a really good cover of Nirvana to kind of, just dangle little hints of what could have happened to these women. I'm not saying you need on-screen hysterectomies and things like that because we all
mm,
heard all those stories, but it still feels like weak sauce, and that's a Disney movie for you.
mm.
That's the PG-13ness of it, and I know because of the brand they were never going to go there, but if you're going to make a Black Widow solo movie, have some balls to go there. And it just doesn't. And by the time David Harbour's cracking jokes every 4 seconds, it it just it lands weak for me. Go ahead. My bad.
See, I kind of agree with you, but I kind of don't. The reason why I'm
Okay.
going to go back to your comic book analogy. Um, the
Hmm.
MCU at this point is essentially a universe, and at this point, I think there is that ability to, in a storytelling sense, go back a couple months in the issues and fill in some gaps. So I'm okay with that.
Hmm.
When you say it's too
But there's
late,
months and
I
then
think
there's
we should have had a
years. This one's years.
well, I think we should have had a Black Widow movie like years ago. I agree with that. I
Oh yeah.
think it's late in that regard. As for being delayed a number of times, there's nothing that could have been done about that, I don't think.
No. Totally agree. Totally
But
agree.
I don't think for the character, for Natasha, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. What you're highlighting as them backing off, I
Hmm.
see it as, yes, it's not visceral and dirty and dark, but I think the point was by introducing this family. You had Alexei,
Sure.
played by David Harbour. You had,
Hmm.
is it Yelena, played by
It,
Florence Pugh, and then I can't
Florence
remember.
Pugh. Yeah.
I can't remember Rachel Weisz's character. But what I like about it is it kind of plays on the idea of what happens to those that do get left behind. Like I almost said Scarlet
Hmm.
Witch, Black Widow or Natasha is someone who got out and did happen to get that lucky card. She did have to pay her dues and do some dark things, but by the time we know her in this
Sure.
timeline, by the time of Civil War, she's very established. She's a superstar in the world. People call her a hero.
Mhm, mhm.
I like the idea of showing the people that aren't that lucky. You have this guy who was supposed to be Captain America for Russia and just became kind of a joke and a lost soul. You had this woman who was, basically being gaslighted against her will for decades by
Mhm.
this the big bad who I don't think is that great in this movie, but that's another story. Um,
Right,
and
right,
then
right.
you have Yelena, who also was a victim of that, and then you have Taskmaster. The kind of twist of this movie for the spoilers is, Taskmaster ended up being the main bad guy's daughter that Natasha thought she had
Yeah,
killed
yeah.
when she was a little kid, which that was a little dark, but
Mhm.
that she survived was a little bit of a pulled punch. I get
Yeah.
that, but I like the remnants of a life left behind. Like this is the one who got away, but there are ghosts of the past. And
Mhm.
I think if Avengers
I'll
Endgame
t
was
I'll
Natasha's,
yeah, go ahead.
go ahead. I was going to say if Avengers Endgame is Natasha's character
No, keep
arc
going.
hitting the family thing, this is her
Mhm.
confronting her past. Maybe not as effectively as we would like, but it's still, I think,
Yeah,
uh, her adjusting to the ghosts of her past, and I actually enjoyed that
sure.
angle quite a bit.
No, no, I don't think I have any problem with the angle other than the visceralness. I won't. I definitely will. I
Hmm.
mean, had we gotten this movie in between Civil War and Infinity War, when it likely would have been slotted, I still might have called this a little bit more. I still probably would have been shaking the flag and the pitchfork for visceralness because I'm one of those people who think Civil War wasn't visceral enough either. And if you were to follow the
Mm.
pulled punches of Civil War with the pulled punches of this, I'd be like, all right, now we're getting a pattern here of just a lot of dancing around for the sake of looking cool. And in my review, I call all that. I admit I call all that more posing than punch. And there's that hilarious little exchange where Yelena is teasing Natasha for her little superhero landing pose, which feels like a Daredevil or a Deadpool joke in a different movie, but and it's true because we have a lot more posing than punch, and the gag becomes later when Yelena lands in the same position, and she finds herself self-embarrassed by the fact that she just did the same move her quote unquote sister did, and it creates a kind of programmed audience laugh at the same time, but yeah, I just like I don't have a problem with the arc. It's still the number one thing is timing, because this is years late. This is just it's a little trickier to pull that off. If a flashback, you brought up in your flub, you brought up kind of the example of where it would be different, and that's like Scarlet Witch, like WandaVision. I know this, format of television and 9 episodes, and definitely some room to play with there. And you get flashbacks there, but you get the flashbacks in fresh off the moment of Endgame, fresh off the moment of where she's been, and the dealing with the grief angle, and the flashbacks to origins are mixed in there, and they're mixed in there to deal with a present in a unique way. And there's no present for this movie, and that's
Yeah,
where this becomes the prequel thing. And I'm like, it's just, yeah, I don't know.
we'll talk about the prequel thing in a minute, but I did want to mention that I'm glad you mentioned the
Mhm.
television series because, as everyone knows, well, maybe they don't know, but because of the pandemic, this was supposed to be the first piece of uh, phase 4 for the MCU, but as a result, it's now the fourth
Mhm.
part of the MCU. And the thing is that Marvel has been nailing the television format so much. And like you said,
Oh yeah.
you have that extended ability to flesh out characters more. I think that
Mhm.
there is having 3 Disney Plus series in a row and having 2 years without a movie does kind of affect the way you view this story because when I was watching the
That's
film,
true.
I was like, oh, they cut a little corner there, not as a bad thing, but then I forgot, oh yeah, I'm watching a film.
Mhm.
I'm not watching 6 to 9 hours of television.
Right, right.
So I think a lot of that Marvel crossbreeding hit me a little bit when
Mhm.
I watched the film. I want to talk about the concept of
Go ahead.
expectations, though. We've talked about this in our
Ooh, see,
Joker
I'm a
episode.
guy who yeah.
No, I see. I'm going to come at it from a different angle than you're thinking.
Okay.
Um, I did the same thing you did. I avoided trailers for this. I followed your lead, even though
Good
it's Marvel. I
good
wanted
man.
I wanted to avoid it because the last thing I needed was 2 years of buildup for something. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I think that would have
Right.
killed it. Here is the deal. Expectation still plays a part in 2 different ways here, in my opinion. One,
Mhm.
people are expecting this movie, whether they're waiting for it for 2 years or 1 month or whatever. People are expecting this movie to be a swan song to Black Widow. Um, I actually
Mm.
don't think that's the case. When I was watching this
I
movie,
agree.
I I I have the feeling she'll be back. I actually expected when it faded to black at the end that it would say Black Widow will return. I get the idea that
Mm,
there's an open endedness to this story because there's a lot of story to fill with Black Widow. I mean, basically, they kind of show what happened after Civil War and then how she ended up getting the Quinjet and how she's going to hook up with Captain America. And they were basically on the run for a few
hmm.
years. I'm not sure they'll
That's
ever
right.
get. I'm not sure they'll ever get like Chris Evans back and do a whole thing like that. But
Not a chance. Yeah.
I do feel that the story is still open ended. It's almost like you said, finding back issues to a comic and filling in some gaps. So when I was watching it, I tried to get that out of my mind that this is the swan song. Because yeah, if you view this movie, if the expectation is that this is going to be your swan song to Black Widow, you're definitely going to be disappointed because to me, this
Hmm.
film is action and posing first and emotion second.
Hmm.
The
I
film
agree.
suffers a little bit from what happened in phase one of the MCU, which was you have to kind of flesh out some characters at the expense of having a good villain. This was a very
I agree
phase
there.
one villain. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
I mean, I love
so,
Ray Winstone as an actor, but
oh,
this is a
sure, sure.
spot where, yeah, but this is a spot where it's Ray Winstone playing Ray Winstone. Like it's the gravelly voices, the tough guy talk. It's obviously 27 f words less than The Departed, but we're not getting very far away from Ray Winstone playing Ray Winstone.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that there are some issues here, but I also think, yeah, you have to take that anyone who's listening to this for some reason, even though they haven't watched it, you have to take the expectation
Mm.
out that this is Black Widow's swan song because that's just not how this story
Yeah,
works. It
I
is not a swan song
sure.
story.
Sure. No, I even as a guy who avoided trailers, I knew this couldn't be that at all. In the the I'm going to put the little halfway bell here just so we know. All right, so 15 minutes down, 15
Cool.
minutes to go. So, no, I
All right.
definitely did not have the expectation of any kind of swan song. I was expecting, origin fill-ins and things like that. And once you had Florence Pugh in here, I knew you'd get a torch passing, and that's all well and good. And I think that's the part that's going to continue because she steals this movie for sure. She has a more
Oh yeah.
interesting assassin character. She has, a compelling. She has more of the compelling origin story going on with the whole Ohio sequence that opens the film than Natasha does, and obviously she's still around
Hmm.
to be the springboard to go further. And if that's who continues on, that's fantastic and mission accomplished in terms of doing that, even if it still is in a way a few years late. If you were to bring back Natasha, you undercut a huge emotional part of Endgame, and I don't think they're dumb enough to do that. Don't get me wrong, no one stays dead in the comics, and Marvel at some point will find a place to have people come back to life, but that's you can't touch because of Endgame being what Endgame was. You can't touch Tony and you can't touch Natasha. You just and half of Gamora. So you just can't. You do that, you're gonna start undercutting things that people were gonna call you to the carpet
Oh, I don't
for.
think that'll
So
happen.
I'm hoping.
I, I no, I don't think that's going to happen. Before, unfortunately, since I follow a lot of Marvel stuff, I also
Hmm.
knew that Florence Pugh wasn't going to die because she's been on the set of the Hawkeye show,
Oh yeah,
which ties in directly to
exactly. Yeah.
obviously the end credit sequence, which I was the only one who cheered. Everyone else booed in my theater because I guess everyone hates Hawkeye except me. But so I knew she was going to survive. But I wanted to ask you. Here's a good question. You and
Okay.
I talked about this off air. There's a couple things you said you kind of don't like prequels in general because the stakes are
I
lower. But you
don't.
also said that
Foregone
this you were
conclusion.
worried this was going to
Quite.
be the you also said this was going to be maybe the Solo of Marvel. I think we can
Uh-huh.
safely say it's not the Solo of Marvel. There is not a lot of
I agree with that. Yeah.
there is really not a lot of fan service. You like, oh, your name is Han Solo.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
there's
yeah.
none of
Well,
that
it's
garbage.
also
So
yeah, and it's also a character that had less. It's a supporting character getting a solo movie, which is wonderful. And you're not recasting anything. Scarlett Johansson still looks young enough. We still get 3 ass shots of her, so we know it's still her. Stuff like that. So it's not it's not reinventing the wheel for the sake of a cash grab where you're recasting a legend. There's no recasting here, which it was one of Solo's biggest
Yeah.
things is you just, if you were to do a Lando Calrissian origin story solo movie, so to speak, that's more interesting because we get nothing out of Lando other than Cloud City and some stories about Han Solo. We all know Han Solo to death. He needs no introduction. Black Widow
Right.
isn't a headliner the way everyone else is. She could use a little backstory, and this fits good. So yes, I agree. This definitely did not turn into Solo.
Okay, so here's the thing about prequels. I think with we always kind of say like stuff is a foregone conclusion. I think we can agree that 95% of all media is a foregone conclusion. When you're watching a Captain America movie, it's likely Captain America's not going to die, right? Okay, what is to me? I
Yeah,
wanted
but
to ask you this.
there's a tipping point there. Yeah,
Yeah, but I think when you
there's a
watch
tipping
TV
point where
shows,
there's
you
some
kind of know they're
genuine.
going to make it.
Sure. Well, yeah, but there's still a tipping point of chance, and it's enough of one to go from foregone conclusion to at least maybe because yeah, good will win and evil will lose, and heroes can be heroes, but there's always enough
Right.
maybe that when the snap happens in Infinity War and people start getting dusted, you stand up and you are shocked, even though you know that the movie is a split movie and you're going to get Endgame and there's a really good chance everyone's coming back in the moment. That maybe really turns into something that sticks, whereas everything else is very foregone conclusion. So I'm yes,
Let's talk.
it's that difference between
I,
like 50 and 20%. Like, 50% is that 50-50 chance you never know. A hero can make it, a hero cannot. When it's 20%, 80% where you're like, yeah, this is getting really easy here. So there's just
well,
it's that grain of
let's
salt, that doubt, whatever you want to call it.
Okay, fair enough. I guess with Black Widow, I was more on my emotional journey with Natasha, filling in the gaps that I didn't mind that. Um,
Yeah.
but let's talk about two prequels that are pretty big in people's minds, and I wanted to get your take on it. First, you have
Okay.
Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Okay,
Mm.
what
Mhm.
is arguably the greatest scene in The Phantom Menace? Like, what does everyone remember about Episode 1
Oh god,
the most?
it's the Darth Maul fight scene at the end. Yeah, I mean, it's the double-bladed lightsaber, this awesome villain who comes in and it becomes a formative moment for Obi-Wan Kenobi more than it does for Anakin Skywalker. It's either that or the podcast or the pod racing.
No,
That's it.
so what I'm saying is that the best part of that film is technically a foregone conclusion, but it still has excitement to it. We know Obi-Wan
Well, yeah, because
Kenobi's going to
Qui-Gon
survive.
you have yeah, but you don't know if Qui-Gon Jinn's gonna make it. You don't
That's true.
now, obviously, he's not there in the future, and you don't know if Darth Maul's gonna make it. Is he our big heavy for 3 movies? Like, there's 2/3 of the roster of that fight is still doubt.
I
So oh,
see.
no,
I
no,
see.
no,
Okay, that's what
there
I wanted to get your
yeah,
take on that because that's kind of.
yeah.
But I still get excited watching that scene, even though I know Obi-Wan's going to make it.
Oh, sure.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I
Oh,
still,
no, me too, me too.
it doesn't bother me. And there was actually
Yeah.
scenes in Black Widow as well where, especially towards the end when she's flying in the sky, where I was actually still nervous,
Mhm.
even though
Oh,
I know
there's
she's going to make it.
legit good there is legit good stunt work. There is legit good fight choreography in this movie. I want to even say, I think I even said in my review, second best fight choreography to Black Panther, in my opinion, at MCU. Like, there's some legit good fights.
Ooh, interesting. Interesting. We'll have to talk about that at another time. Black Panther, huh? Is your
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
favorite? Interesting.
Well,
Okay.
for
All
fight
right.
choreography, for fight choreography.
Did you notice in Black Widow? I'm going to sidebar here for a second. Did you notice that
Mhm.
since Taskmaster's ability is to mimic fights, did you
Mhm.
notice that I'm going to call her she, was watching the
Yeah,
Hawkeye Black Panther fight from Civil War early in the film?
I did see that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Did you
And it
notice
comes
that?
into play, but
Yeah, I thought that
I
was
did. Okay.
I thought that was pretty
All right.
cool. I
What's
thought
your
it was a
second
little
prequel?
nice little note. Godfather
Yeah,
2.
I'm with you. What's your second prequel? Yeah. Now,
Godfather
Godfather
2.
2. Well, yeah, but you go. you have one character, same. Well, there's enough death in that movie too, where okay, fine, Robert De Niro playing Corleone's gonna make it. Everything else that still happens in the, towards your present flight, when you still see the Michael storyline, all that's still being torn fresh. So yeah, again, two
No, I'm
thirds
not
out
talking
of
about the
one
Michael
third
stuff.
of that
I'm
movie
just
has some
talking
parallel
about.
to it.
Well, no, I'm not talking
Yeah.
about the Pacino parts, because that's a Michael thing. That's a sequel
Mhm.
part. I meant the prequel parts. Like,
Well, sure.
we know that he's
Well,
eventually
yeah,
going to become this major crime boss. We know that he's going to, you know what I
mhm.
mean?
Yeah, but
It's a
the whole
filling in the
movie's not
gap
that like
story.
there.
It's
It's a
giving context.
sure. Well, yeah, and I can handle that when it's well mixed with other things, and that's the fun part about
Mm,
the Star Wars movie is there's you're introducing new things, you have some new angles and some new situations, and there's still some parallel and some doubt because there's new stuff there. All of the Michael stuff, if all Godfather 2 was young Vito, yeah, foregone conclusion, there's not much else going on in the movie other than a bunch of gap filling. And too much, unfortunately, of Black Widow feels like there's nothing other than Florence, who we all think is getting a baton passed to her. There's just there's just nothing else going
mm,
forward. It's the foregone conclusions outweigh the new things. Is how I'm gonna weigh my prequels.
I got it. That makes sense. I do like your
Yeah,
approach to those. That's a very, very smart
slippery
approach.
slope, no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, slippery
Um,
slope, no doubt.
another thing I was going to mention about the expectations is, if anyone knows me
Mhm,
and my Marvel loves, my favorite characters tend to be the more street level characters. People know that I love Ant-Man, I love Hawkeye, I love Black Widow.
mhm,
I tend to like the more street level stuff. And what I liked about this movie is that the stakes, except for the very like last 10 minutes where you're like, oh, he's controlling the whole world. What? Um, the,
yeah,
the
right,
the
right.
stakes are relatively low enough. The stakes are relatively low enough that this becomes kind of an action movie first. I don't know if I
Yeah, and
subconsciously
not a
prepared for this
superhero
movie.
movie. I'm with you there.
Right. I don't know if I subconsciously prepared for this movie in the last week, but I've really kind of been binging a lot of 90s or 90s style action films. And I think this
Mhm,
is why this movie really gave me a nice cuddly feeling, is because like the Russo brothers when they did like Civil War and Winter Soldier and stuff, there's kind of a throwback action first
oh,
quality to
yeah.
this movie. It's a very, I mean, and this plays into my expectations angle. I think people expecting a superhero film, are going to be
Mhm.
surprised by
Didn't get a superhero film,
how
right?
action oriented this movie is. This is a fantastic action film. Whatever it is on the emotional end, whatever you want to say on the
Mhm,
prequel end, the action in this movie is fantastic, and a
agreed.
lot of it is practical, and the stunts are great.
Yeah. The hard part also with timing is, and I can't take credit for this idea. This would be more Scott Mendelson from Forbes as a critic, but this movie would be a whole lot cooler if it came out when it was kind of supposed to and before Atomic Blonde, Red Sparrow, Hannah, like the
Mm-hmm.
female spy genre going on, where yes, you take the superhero level labels and costumes of this and you bring it down in stakes to where this movie is as just an espionage and action movie. That'd be great if and the gaslighting and the female driven angst and angles and the shattered family, all that would be great if we hadn't already seen Atomic Blonde, Red
Yes,
Sparrow, other
agreed.
films. And that's where another place where this movie and those movies, unfortunately, or fortunately, or unfortunately, depends on where you're coming from. Those movies go a hell of a lot harder than this one, and maybe that's also what makes this movie seem soft. Is you can go watch Charlize Theron kick all kinds of ass, or Jennifer Lawrence do the same thing in a story that just goes harder for the same exact angles that could easily have been done good here. I do think if this was a 90s movie, like if this was a, pre-Blade, like if this was a legit 90s movie, I think we would have gotten a an R-rated ass-kicking affair where
Sure.
we would still have the visceralness would be there because that was the 90s for you. So, yeah.
No, yeah, I mean more of in a visual way, and the fact that it's kind of a throwback. I mean, there's a lot of cars being destroyed in this film. There's a lot of wire work and stunt stuff. There's a lot of people flying and falling off of buildings and stuff. So I really dig that. Like I said, I mean, of course, there's going to be a lot of CGI and stuff. It's a Marvel movie, but I do like when these street level films on the Marvel end. Your Winter Soldiers, your Civil Wars, your Ant-Mans, your Hawkeyes, and stuff like that. They tend to be a little bit more visceral, and
I agree with that.
You know, people complain that Marvel is all CGI, which really pisses me off because there is a wide variety of films and genre types that the MCU participates in, and that's why I really liked Black Widow in the end, is because it actually is an action film, and I dig that. It's comfort food. It really feels good. The last thing I'll say on this, because I know the timing's getting a little low, but what I do like about what I do like about this film, I like Captain Marvel. I don't love it. I think it's one of the weaker entries. The reason why I'm not a huge Captain Marvel fan is the movie, not the character, is because I think that there's a lot of tonal problems with the film. And I do think that they do kind of force this concept of the, go girl, female empowerment angle. They have that whole montage in Captain Marvel where she picks herself and dusts herself off,
Yeah, love that montage.
It's a great montage, but thematically and emotionally, it feels a little forced. I think what I like about this film,
earned and a half. I love that part.
Yeah, no, it's a well done sequence. I don't agree with its tone, but we can talk about that another day. But my point is, I guess, is what I love about this film's existence right now in culture today is that we have a massive blockbuster coming out with 3 amazing female leads, a female director. It's unapologetically kick-ass and actiony, but it doesn't bring attention to itself on any of those fronts. This is what movies should be. They should be diverse, equal, feminine, without it being an actual issue. The fact that we have a blockbuster film with all of those qualities and it's not a story is, I think, awesome. And that really impresses me. And that's another reason why this film made me feel really good, is because we're finally getting to the point. I mean, you had female directors on Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, and now Captain Marvel was a duo with a male and a female. And then, of course, you had this one. And then Nia DaCosta is going to be doing the Marvels.
And we got Chloe Zhao coming with Internal. Yeah.
So I'd like that this is becoming normal. And what I like about the film, like I said, we can disagree or agree on Captain Marvel's tone and its how it approached, female empowerment. But I like that this film has badass female characters without having to bring attention to itself with that. It doesn't feel like it's checking any boxes,
No, I agree. And I tell you what, that is the perfect note to end this show on, because that this movie, late or not, or weak or not, it does nail that, and it speaks for what it represents, and that is fantastic. So I tell you what, hit us with the outro, Will.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I'm going to need you guys to follow us on Twitter at Cinephile Fits. It's mostly me handling Twitter. That's why you'll hear a lot of crazy things that Don doesn't agree with on there. But also follow us on Facebook at Cinephile Hissy Fits Podcast. Also find both of us on Letterboxd. I am starting to do a lot of lists, which you'll find very fun, that you'll find plenty of argument with, and will be the influence on future episodes. So keep an eye on that Letterboxd. I'll be releasing some new lists in the next couple days. maybe, just maybe. No, we won't. I'm reading the script. Yeah, can you tell? I'm a great actor. We're not going to post a poll because we didn't really have a fight on this one.
Nah.
Anyway, thank you so much for your captive audience and social media participation. Cinephile Hissy Fits is a 25YL media podcast. It is brought to you by ruminationsradionetwork.com. Please visit, rate, review, and subscribe. If you enjoyed this show, we have more where that came from, with interesting hosts and confirmed now, we can say, because we'll be recording with our first wonderful guest later this week, even though when you listen to this episode, it'll be after the fact. So don't think about it. It's as Ant-Man says in Avengers Endgame, perfectly not confusing. All available on iTunes, Spotify, and anywhere you find your favorite shows.
Well, thanks for coming in fresh on this one now.
No, thanks for staying up late, and I'm going to drop a little teaser here. Next episode we record, I will be dropping a nice special announcement. So we'll see you there.
What's up, gang? This is Hoptimus. You've been listening to one of the great new podcasts from Ruminations Radio Network. If you want some more tasty sound vibes, come check out my new podcast, The Retro Futurist Culture, where we talk about alternate timelines, cyberpunk, anime, and other crazy worlds. If that does not strike your fancy, we have plenty of other great shows at ruminationsradionetwork.com.